Coming up on the Mobile Content Creators Show.
Oh my God, look at this amazing story I just did on my phone. And they basically would get, don't even think about it. We're not going there. You're not going there. If you come back at me again, we're just going to fire you. And they would literally throw in the towel, being so disheartened. And I just kind of thought, this has got to stop.
With the quality of content being created on mobile devices getting so good, what does it mean for major broadcasters and the media in general?
Welcome to the Mobile Content Creators Show. If you're a mobile journalist, marketer or creative who makes content on a mobile device or for mobile audiences, you're in the right place. Keeping you up to date with the fast-moving world of mobile, here's your host and mobile video specialist, Mark Egan.
Hello, today I'm joined by Glenn Mulcahy, who is the Head of Innovation for RTE Technology. RTE, of course, is Ireland's national broadcaster. And Glenn, if that wasn't enough work, is also taking on another role, which is organising the Mojo Con event. Now, Mojo Con, the first one was last year. It's the world's biggest get-together for mobile journalism, PR, anything mobile, basically. And it'll be happening very shortly in Dublin. So, Glenn, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
So, as Head of Innovation, you obviously have to look at all the new bits of kit, the new things that come in. At which point did you realise that actually mobile phones are something you really need to start paying attention to?
It was a spin-off, I guess, of our video journalism project, which started back in around 2000, 2001. RTE was very conscious of this movement towards the idea of the self-shooter or the VJ. And I was on a small steering group, basically charged with introducing video journalism into RTE. If we kind of jump forward in time, back to around 2007, 2008, maybe, I think it was around 2008, we were experimenting with Nokia N93 and N95 smartphones at that stage. But the picture quality was appallingly bad. They were using bizarre file formats that took hours to transcode to get it into our main newsroom system. And the future didn't look very promising for Mojo back then. Jump forward again about a year, maybe a little bit more, and was actually abroad doing a video journalism training course with the large VJ cameras. And while I was there, I think I had an iPhone 4 or 4S, I can't remember. I think it was a 4, actually, and the first generation iPad. And while the students were actually out doing an exercise with the VJ cameras, I decided to just use some of the gear that we had there, some of the tripods and microphones and so on and so forth, to shoot some interviews with some of the other trainers and with some of the actual trainees just to get a flavour of the course. And I knew at that stage already that you could copy the content from the phone to the iPad easily using the camera connection kit. So that's exactly what I did, edited in iMovie, and then just used an FTP app to send it back to RTE. And it was purely just a kind of proof of concept, test how it was, see what the editing was like. We were using Avid on laptops at that stage. And the thing that really surprised me, to be perfectly honest, was that the quality control guys back in our ingest room passed the video clip no problem. And it really made me wonder, if I had said, was it shot on an iPhone, would there have been much more kind of ruthless interrogation of the quality, or was it that it just blended into everything else that they were getting in over the desk on the day?
Well, I mean, that is the issue, to get straight into the nub of it. I mean, people are often amazed you put sort of iPhone footage on a big screen, and they're like, wow, that was shot on an iPhone. Now, with the help of the projects you've been involved in, RTE has aired quite a few news pieces shot on iPhones. What's the reaction been like? Has there been much resistance? Are people, going along with it? Have there been many kind of technical discussions about, is this good enough for broadcast?
So I guess there's two sides to that coin. The first one is the public perception. The public perception is, to be perfectly blunt, they really don't know the difference. We don't put a strap on anything that we shoot with a smartphone to say that it's a smartphone. Some other stations do. For us, a story is a story, irrespective of what device it's shot on. And we've never once, and I say this genuinely, we've never once had a negative comment via Twitter or social media or letters or helplines or anything else as well. I think genuinely, as long as the actual integrity of the journalism stands up and the story is still a valid story, people frankly don't give too much of a damn what you actually shoot it on, I don't think. That's the public perception. Inside, though, it's fair to say that there was met with a lot of resistance both from the technology group, not where I work, actually, believe it or not, but actually in news specifically. The engineering team there were a bit slow to acknowledge the potential, let's say. And equally, some of the journalists weren't exactly grasping the idea with open arms. However, I was lucky that there was a small cohort who could see the potential and were willing to push the boundaries. And the more they prove the potential, the more the naysayers start to have to kind of concede, actually, okay, well, yeah, it is very good. And my God, did you actually do that with a phone? And that became more and more the mantra that we got certainly over the last 3 years in particular.
And have you found that, the main objections are from the people from the more technical side? It's, pure picture quality, and they'll find, things to do with bit rates and, color sampling that they're not happy with. And from the journalism side, it can often be ego. If I'm turning up somewhere and I've got this little phone and the person next to me from the other broadcaster has got their big swanky camera, I look like an idiot. Is you found that in your experience?
Yeah, we've certainly had examples of where the feedback from journalists would be that they feel professionally undermined, I think would probably be the right expression, when they've been asked to go out to shoot with a phone. Again, the classic example we get thrown at us from time to time is, you're expecting me to go and interview the Taoiseach of the country, and all I'm going to bring with me is a phone, a tripod, and a microphone. You must be kidding. At the same time, there is the inverse side of that about the credibility thing with journalists. And actually, we've never yet had someone refuse to do an interview or, give a journalist a hard time over the fact that it's actually a phone that they're shooting with. And I think a huge part of that is that, smartphones are ubiquitous. Like, the chances are, there's a bloody good chance, actually, out of the 3 billion of them out there, that the person you're interviewing probably has one, or certainly knows someone who has one. So they're a common device, and people know that they can shoot video. The bit of surprise is that a broadcaster is using them for professional content creation. And, you could always argue that, going back to even the birth of video journalism, that the engineers were very, very fast to kind of stamp their feet and say that these don't match or meet the broadcasting standards that have been laid down by yada, 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 whoever it might be. Could be EBU, could be elsewhere. The bottom line is that gradually and more, I think news organizations are conceding the fact that the audience is not just at the end of a television set, at the end of a linear schedule, that our audience is on the go. They're mobile themselves. They're consuming news content from the minute they wake up to the minute they go to sleep. We don't have that exclusive access to them to reveal the big stories of the day anymore the way we once had. And you kind of have to realize that you've got to respond to that. So what mobile has actually effectively done is, to a certain extent, challenge the traditional linear delivery and creation platform and create an entire end-to-end ecosystem all in its own right. Shot on mobile, made for mobile, is something that we've been pushing even harder and harder over the last 12 months.
Because, of course, you can have a big camera with very nice lens, but if you want to post stuff to social media or get it back quickly, the phone and its connectivity and all the apps it can use is a big advantage. Now, on the kind of conventional news package sense, give me numbers. What kind of number of pieces have you put out using just iPhones?
So the Mobile Journalism Project in RTE has been running for about 3, maybe pushing into 4 years aggressively. There was a year where there was a lot of research work done on apps and accessories and everything, but it wasn't really being used. I would say we've probably hit over 100 full feature stories that have been broadcast at this stage. That doesn't seem like a big number if you think that we actually churn out about 10 stories or 12 stories a day in our typical news. But at the end of the day, there's actually a team of about maybe 16 journalists in the newsroom who somewhat infrequently effectively create content on mobile. Now, that's been somewhat frustrating to me, to be perfectly honest, because I led the project initially in news. I left news about 2.5 years ago, and since I left news, the emphasis has changed somewhat from long form feature-led stories, which is where RTE to a certain extent pushed the boundaries very early on. Now the emphasis is much more in short form, sometimes graphic driven social media content. So it could be video explainers or stuff like that. And while I'm not saying that one story form is better than another, it's just that it's actually very, very easy to do the latter, whereas actually the former ones are the ones that I think really bring value to the organization. Because, look, I'll give you a simple business model, and this was how I sold it to the CFO here originally. A typical broadcast camera, which you've already asked about, that's going to run 50 to maybe 70,000 euros with a good HD lens on the front of it. Just ask yourself, with a deep breath, how many journalists could you put out in the field with a fully equipped smartphone, including tripod and all the other accessories for that money? I mean, it's probably 40 people. So the math suddenly starts to say that if each one of those people were prepared to create content with this device on a daily or even weekly basis, you could be creating volumes of stories that never effectively see the light of day. But it's still valuable news, and it's news that can be shared across social media platforms and on the website, rather than try to squeeze it into the 1 hour that we have in the linear schedule. So I don't know if we've really nailed the business strategy yet. I know there's still a lot of discussion in here, and obviously there's the option of live streaming from mobile devices as well, which we've dipped our toes into quite a lot over the last few years. But again, we're not doing it in everyday anger, if you want to call it, in the way that Sky News, for example, is.
So you have all these journalists who you're training up. Do they each get issued with a full kind of kit? And if so, what goes into that kit?
When we put the kind of proposal to management in here, I initially actually said that we should have a team of mobile journalists who would have a complete kit. The complete consisted of an iPhone, an iPad, tripod, a light battery pack, microphone, and I can't even remember the other little bits that were in there effectively, but there was a MiFi and a few others. And management initially said, great idea, but there's no way that we're going to start investing in iPhones and iPads for the journalists. They can do everything on the phone. So that was the first battle that I lost. But most of the other accessories, the way that we approached it was we had 15 kits fully assembled with all the accessories needed to basically turn the phone into a full production tool. And for a while, we assigned about 5 of those permanently to the people who were doing it frequently, the likes of Philip Bromwell and Patricia O'Callaghan and others. And then the rest of the team could dip in and kind of book them out for a couple of days if they were doing a story. Since I left News, they've gone back and they've updated the kit and changed a couple of the accessories and things, because there is a constant flow of new kit coming on the market. It's phenomenal. Even trying to keep up with it is a challenge. So they have refreshed the kits, and once again they've gone for the model of a few people have permanent kits assigned to them and quite a few effectively come and book it. But that's not an uncommon model. That's the way we would have approached video journalism as well, actually.
Now, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Lots of Android phones are much cheaper than iPhones. They have very nice cameras on them. Are you just a Apple fanboy? Why not use Android phones?
There's a few things. I guess the first thing is, when I was testing this project going back to 2011, Android really hadn't matured at that stage. I mean, yes, some of the devices have much better cameras, but if you're to do the math, what percentage of the total devices have the much better cameras versus what huge potential or percentage of them don't? And inversely, we needed to standardize from our point of view, particularly in an organization of our size. Support is really, really important. The biggest challenge with Android is fragmentation. So yes, you have some devices like Samsung and Sony and LG that have 20 megapixel, or even the Microsoft Lumia range, if you want to go on another platform, which have much higher specification cameras, at least on paper. But inversely, what I would say is that their weakness is the fact that this fragmentation means there's such a huge variety of processors. The fact that you can customize the actual operating system for a particular brand as well means that it's not really standard. So iOS gave us a couple of key benefits. One is, yes, we had to trade off on the technical size of the sensor. But like I said already, that never became an issue on air. No one ever noticed. So I don't think that's a big trade-off. But what it did bring was a much bigger ecosystem of professional high-end level apps, which I think Android has slowly started to kind of reclaim ground on, but certainly iOS still, I think, would lead the fray that way. Equally, accessories. I mean, yes, there's no question that you can get analog accessories that will plug into the headphone socket of most Android phones and work. But iOS's made for iPhone program meant that big manufacturers, have put a lot of energy into developing accessories specifically for the iOS range. And I mean, this year alone, we've seen brands like Sennheiser and Shure and others come out with actual dedicated accessories for the iPhone. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. I think that definitely is going to kind of hold as the iPhone advantage. But to answer your question in short form, I've been an Apple fanboy since I was actually in design college like 20-something years ago. But that wasn't why I made the decision. I made the decision because I tried it was a HTC, I think, I can't remember the model, and an iPhone 4 at the time. And when it came to the actual wealth of what you could do, I'm afraid the iPhone completely outshone the Android device. I could shoot, I could edit, I could do post-production graphics, I could grade, I could do stills. All that stuff hadn't matured in the Android space at all. Though, like I say, we are getting there now.
We're going to come to Mojo Con now. Now, Mojo Con, big conference, first one was held last year in Dublin. But even from then till now, and we're coming up shortly to the next Mojo Con, the difference in the quality of some of the apps, especially the accessories, and the phones themselves, is phenomenal in the space of a year. I mean, when you were beginning to put together Mojo Con 2, what did you think? Okay, how am I going to do this differently? How am I going to adapt to the fact that it's such a fast-moving world? I think actually probably the biggest challenge, to be perfectly honest, doing it again was, one, to make it relevant
So to be mindful of the other trends that were going on out there, because last year the emphasis was, because it was kind of the first of its sort, the emphasis was trying to pack as many different aspects of mobile content production into one event as we possibly could. Whereas this year we've added in extra sessions. We haven't compromised any of the core ones. We've added in extra ones that also factor in some of the new trends like 360 video and VR, which I still think are intimately linked into mobile, in the sense that, you know, mobile is ultimately the delivery platform that most people are going to experience this content on. So I think they're very much inextricably linked. But to go back to your point, I mean, the evolution of it in the last 12 months, from my perspective, has been phenomenal. When I reached out to exhibitors, for instance, this time round, quite a few knew about the conference even before I'd actually given them the sales pitch. Equally, the amount of actually, like I said, the high-end accessories that have come on the market is phenomenal. And a little birdie tells me that there'll be a few revealed at NAB, which will be on show at Mojo Con as well. New ones, yet again, that no one has even heard a whisper of. So, I mean, it's evolving at breakneck speed. But I think the biggest thing that changed between Mojo Con 2015 and this one is 4K. So, you know, broadcasters are all mixed about whether 4K really is yet another 3D phenomenon, which effectively will be a damn squib, or whether it could be the future of content other than for broadcast. Because I'm not too sure any broadcasters are screaming to get loads of money to try and do 4K terrestrial transmission. But at the same time, you have the likes of Facebook and YouTube and Vimeo pushing 4K content over the top via the internet. Sony has already come out with a phone that actually has a 4K display on it. So you can, without any genius, you can see that the trend is more and more towards this idea that the actual consumption devices, I mean smartphones, effectively will continue to get exponentially better year on year with faster processors, more storage, yada, yada, yada. The accessories keep coming on stream. So it means that the quality of the content being produced on phones, if I was to be really, really antagonizing to my colleagues, I would say I'm shooting 4K content on my iPhone, I'm editing 4K content on my iPhone, I'm publishing straight to YouTube. But none of the traditional broadcast gear in RTE can do that. That's a pretty phenomenal claim. Now, I get all sorts of pushback when I start saying that just because the image size is bigger doesn't mean the actual technical quality is better. But it doesn't matter, because to Joe Public, the perception is.
But even beyond perception,
quality.
I mean, you know, you see this stuff on a big screen, and
Yep.
it looks good. And I know that somebody with some very fancy equipment can pull certain aspects of it apart. But as a viewer, you know, I look at this stuff and I think, wow, you know, the picture quality is phenomenal. Now, I mean, there are conferences that deal with mobile, like Mobile World Congress in Barcelona is mental, it's massive, everything to do with mobile phones or mobile devices. You have journalism conferences, you have conferences about social media. Why is there a need to have Mojo Con, which is kind of has a foot in all of those camps?
Because I've attended Mobile World Congress, and I've gone to a plethora of various different journalism conferences. And while mobile does often kind of feature on the agenda, maybe as a single session or a single workshop more often than not, it doesn't have, I felt, it doesn't have the actual draw to bring a community of people together under that one heading. So it's thrown in as a kind of a topic in a much, much broader kind of context. The whole idea behind MojoCon, to be perfectly honest, was I had been abroad doing training for other news organizations from RTE, and a couple of times I came back after doing courses where I had journalists who were absolutely, I mean, overwhelmingly positive about their experience and about the fact that suddenly they had become visual storytellers, whereas previously they had to depend on a crew of sometimes 2, 3, even 4 people. And to empower them to the point that they could actually create stories complete down to the delivery for them was actually pretty much a game changer. So I'd leave after delivering a course really excited that there's a new generation of visual storytellers coming on the market. And then a week later, I'd get an email from them where they were broken, disheartened, disillusioned, and felt that I'd basically sold them snake oil. And the whole premise of that was they would go back to their stations and they'd go to their management or to their engineering colleagues, whatever, oh my God, look at this amazing story I just did on my phone. And they basically would get, don't even think about it. We're not going there. You're not going there. If you come back at me again, we're just going to fire you. And they would literally throw in the towel being so disheartened. And I just kind of thought, this has got to stop. This is absolutely insane. This has got to stop. And I kind of felt that if, rather than having the fractured approach that was happening at the time, I felt the old premise of there is safety in numbers. So the whole idea of MojoCon was actually to create an event that would draw or attract all the people who are pioneers in this space to one venue at the same time, to give them relevance, to bring all the manufacturers that were bringing all the different accessories in the market to one place at the same time as well. to add in alcohol into the mix, because that's always a good thing.
It's
for
Dublin.
getting people's tongues to
come on,
loosen up. It's Dublin. But so to effectively create the melting pot that might actually spawn some of the next generation in the evolution of where this goes. And last year there definitely were discussions that took place at the conference that I think may have not necessarily shaped, but certainly informed some of the development work that's gone on in the last 12 months. And I think this one, because we've gotten even more notable brands coming to this one, like the likes of IBM and Ericsson, and brands who last year shunned us with the best respect. They had no idea what the idea even was. This year they're actually at the door, kind of going, "We'd like in some capacity, because we need to be aware of what all this is about." And I'm kind of going,
you're old enough, like I am, to remember, with the video journalism thing, it was the same discussions, wasn't it? That it wasn't about the story; it was about the bit rates of the camera and everything. And people were knocked back, and people had a very hard time. And now, if you were to say to youngsters coming out of college or university that, that you are not allowed to pick up a camera, they would think you're absolutely bonkers, because it's perfectly normal. In the same way that shooting on a mobile device, even a year ago, I think perceptions have changed till now for all the reasons that you're just stating. And I mean, give us a bit of a sales pitch. What kind of people will we see at Mojo Con this year?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that we've managed to up the amount of sessions. So we actually have 50 speakers this year, which is a phenomenal amount of people to effectively to process on a given day. But we adopted a kind of a system last year, which the feedback from delegates afterwards seemed to be extremely positive towards. So a lot of conferences go for a very short list of speakers. Each speaker then gets like an hour on stage. And I can see why financially that makes perfect sense, but I'm not entirely sure for the delegates that's the best possible experience. The whole idea behind the way that I kind of structured MojoCon was that you would have speakers who would literally get 10 minutes to pitch their personal story, whatever it is they did that was unique, that justified them being on the stage. And if that story resonated with anyone in the audience, that we would then create an environment to facilitate that conversation between the two of them. So rather than a traditional conference, which in my experience certainly has an awful lot of the kind of them and us vibe about it, where the speakers don't mix with the delegates. I don't buy that ivory tower crap at all, to be honest with you. We wanted to create a kind of an environment where there really was a community feel to it, where people kind of all mucked in and shared their knowledge and experience. And one of the ways that we achieved that was we didn't go looking after keynote speakers and tons of them who were all on the traditional circuit fest at all the journalism festivals. We found people who had real stories, real experience in the field, and gave them a platform to share that story. And I think that was one of the key success factors. So this year, again, the focus has been very much on finding the person at the heart of the story rather than finding a spokesperson. And we have people from a very, very diverse background. We have some people coming back. We have people who are brand new to the system and brand new to the movement in some ways, but who have actually, so to speak, seen the light and are absolute advocates of it now. I mean, even in the last 24 hours, we've announced the winners of our Thompson Foundation competition, and we have two fantastic, relatively new on the scene mobile journalists. And, it's just great to see that evolution and new people coming. So anyway, sorry, waffling, but to answer your question, we have 6 fantastic case studies in the mobile journalism session, all looking at various different aspects of how mobile journalism has affected multiple different media. So it's not all just TV. We have radio examples and newspaper examples and so on and so forth. We have a session effectively looking at the evolution of live streaming. I mean, amazingly enough, last year, about 5 days before MojoCon, Twitter drops Periscope, and 40 people tried to Periscope the first session and killed the Wi-Fi.
I do remember that, yeah. I may have been one of them.
Too. No. I'm grayer as a result. But that sort of stuff. But it's a very real topic because that also has started to mature in a big way. And if you think about the latest figures in relation to 5G, there's already a standard for the next 5th generation network actually being agreed. We're looking at 2020 as the evolution and rollout of that. You're looking at gigabit per second speeds to mobile devices by then. This is, 4K delivery over the mobile network becomes a reality as soon as you get 5G.
And of course, beyond 4K, you're into 360 kind of stuff as well. So
exactly. And as you mentioned, 360, we have sessions on 360, we have sessions on drones, we have sessions on hyperlocal. I'll just mention this one. So last year we did a session specifically on social media and verification, which I think has kind of been done now. But this year we've taken that and we've looked at it in the context of how it might impact on hyperlocal news, because I know of about 15 case studies here in Ireland where people tried to start local TV stations and they made the fundamental mistake of basing the model on how RTE do business. So they bought broadcast cameras and high-end craft edit suites and yada, 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 and then discovered they're getting 50 quid for a 30-second ad from the local butcher. This is never going to work as a business model. However, if you look at case studies, we have Phyllis Stevens, basically from the Edinburgh Reporter, who has managed to create a very successful business with a hyperlocal site based in Edinburgh, and it's all predicated on both social media and short-form video content from mobile. And I think that's the future. I mean, I've actually been advocating in RTE that what we should actually do is create a platform for local communities to build their own hyperlocal news network. And not only that, we should go in and we should train them how to actually shoot as well. So, so plenty of topics for discussion. Obviously, the 4K stuff is going to be a very interesting session. I think it's going to be interesting to hear the guys who are the large chip camera team, the likes of Philip Bloom and Dan Chung, who are obviously used to using extremely high quality cameras like Arri Alexas and all this sort of stuff. Both of them have experience shooting with mobiles. We've given them a platform to debate and discuss the idea of is it still mobile if it's shot on something like a DSLR. Personally, my opinion is that the camera is, as long as the person is basically doing all the work themselves, frankly, I'm not terribly fussed about the specific camera, but the benefit obviously of doing it on mobile is you have an entire end-to-end ecosystem.
So just wrapping up, where do you see this, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, even 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now? You're involved in innovation, you see all the latest gadgets, you see the trends. How's it looking 5 years from now?
So I think a 5-year time frame is a really interesting number because, as I alluded to a minute ago, it's going to be a time frame that factors in the rollout of the 5th generation mobile network. And some of the papers that I've read in relation to this are forecasting 1 gigabit per second speeds to mobiles, but some are talking about 10 gigabits per second mobile networks, which is off the charts. Over that same period, we're going to see the continued growth. I have no doubt whatsoever that VR and 360 augmented reality is one of those new digital platforms that's not going to go away. It may find a niche within the kind of a target demographic of the millennials or maybe people up into their 30s. Certainly, my mother, who's 75, is probably not going to want to wear a VR headset. But you never know. She once said she'd never use an iPad, and she adores that. So there you go. But certainly the two of those fused together, plus the fact that we're seeing a slow trend, I think, towards even more powerful cameras in mobile phones. So, I mean, there's a much rumored idea that the next iPhone might actually have a dual lens system. We've seen prototypes like the Light camera, which has actually got 8, I think, cameras, 7 or 8 cameras in it, all with different depth of field features and everything. And I think the key thing is, one, is impossible to predict because the likes of Apple and everything don't tell you what's coming next. In fact, they're probably working on it and have been for 3 years. But the bottom line is that there's no question that both the processor power, the quality of the cameras, the quality of the accessories are all going to continue to improve exponentially over the next 3 to 5 years. So I think the resistance that we're currently seeing in traditional linear broadcasters is going to have to fall aside because there's another trend that, much as lots of broadcasters don't like anyone to talk about it, it's like, don't talk about the war. The bottom line is that viewership is falling for linear television. No matter what way you read it and everything else, if a broadcaster is giving you the figure about, our figures are staying static, there's no loss in viewership, ask them this question: what age is your mean average audience? Because then you get the answer, well, they're 50-something, or in some cases I've even heard 60-something. And then there's the natural answer of, well, so as a target demographic for advertisers, they're becoming a little bit less and less and less relevant as they get older, because obviously the advertisers want to try and get the millennials and the housewives and the people who basically have budget to spend. So broadcasters will need to respond to this. They will need to stop thinking about linear delivery methods and start to look at the idea of having diverse, agile teams of journalists that can actually go into more niche topics. Because at the end of the day, an awful lot of main news bulletins are kind of, for the general populace. There isn't any real niche stuff in there. And yet, as national broadcasters, we're actually expected to serve minority and niche audiences as well. Mobile empowers that. Mobile offers the opportunity to do that. We have 150 journalists. We have 17 camera crews. The math means on any given day, we have a very fixed number of packages that we could be creating. I think all broadcasters need to wake up, certainly in their news divisions in the first instance anyway, and realize that having people out in the beating communities outside of the big cities becomes a possibility as long as you have a mobile network or Wi-Fi and a device and someone knows how to use it. And I think that's where it's going to go for us. I think we'll actually start to offer a unique kind of almost hyper-local service, both mentored and also created by ourselves. But hey, I could be wrong.
But I don't think you will be. Well, thanks for your time, Glenn. I know that setting up a conference of any size is a big sort of undertaking. So Mojo Con, like you say, it was a great experience last year because, it wasn't a fact, speakers spoke and then disappeared off, had great discussions, maybe a few pints did flow and helped the conversation too. But looking forward to it again this year. And thank you for your time and best of luck with the rest of the time you have to get this conference up and running.
20 days and counting, Mark. Trust me, I'm going grayer by the day, but it's all falling into place now. So I'm delighted that it's going to be what I think is going to be another cracking event, and look forward to seeing you here in Dublin.
Thank you, Glenn.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. And we'd love it if you would leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher. To get in touch with Mark, go to www.purplebridgemedia.com or tweet him at Mark Egan Video.